Okay, so now we work on the human act, number 50. It will be, and to study that chapter we need 3 documents. You have first to take document on wait a minute, page 369, the last page. That is, you have to put that apart with page 364. Yes, 364. So 365, excuse me, 364 and 369, they are the same, but not exactly the same commentary. So they are complementary. Huh? And the other is the, you can have the page 365, you have the general map, huh? And 362. So you have the same thing repeated 4 times. 4 times. So, but the most important is to have in front of you 369 and 364. So the human act, since the subject of ethics is a voluntary human activity, it is necessary to clarify at the beginning, the outset, what is meant by distinctively human act. And here I quote a chapter from Father Fagotti. The human conduct, the human life consists of the actions a man performs, and the actions, and primarily of action which are under his control. Control, self-determination, you remember, self-mastering. Freedom is self-mastering, self-determination, auto-determination, self-control. It is by those actions under his control that man lives like a man. So that means to live a human conduct, moral conduct, we must use our 2 specific faculties, the intellect and the will. And every human action implies the action of the 2 faculties, and it is the object of our class now. Human conduct is made of the action under the control of man, and the control of man, it is made by using his intellect to know what he is doing, and the will, taking the decision to do or not to do what his intellect proposes to the will. Okay? So we have to distinguish, we already spoke about that, the act of man and the human act. In Latin, actus hominis, the act of man, and the other, the human act. The act of man is any action accomplished by men, but also accomplished by animals. They are, for example, you sleep. To sleep is an action of man. It is not proper to man, okay? To eat, to digest, also to. Saint Thomas gives example, fricat barban. Fricat, he scratches his beard. Maybe if I had a beard sometime in Africa, in South America, so you have to use our finger somewhere. So, fricat, that is an act of man. No, it's not a moral act. Okay? But a human act is the act accomplished, performed only by human being and proper to man. That means the act made, accomplished with the action of the intellect and the action of the will. And that they are human acts. And those human acts are the object of ethics. The object of ethics is not the act of man, but the act, the human act, accomplished with his will. We call that voluntary act. A voluntary act. In Latin, voluntas, the will. So accomplish voluntarily, with full consent, with consent. Okay, so at next page, page 356. you have the text of St. Thomas here. And St. Thomas writes at the beginning, of action done by man, those alone are properly called human, which are proper to man as man. For example, to think, to will, or to act as a man. For example, when we eat, we don't eat like an animal. It is a human act, it is an act of man, but at the same time, we put our reason in our freedom in the way we eat, in the quantity we eat, etc. So we can see that eating is a human act. The proof of that, what Christians do before a meal, they bless the meal. You know? They bless the Lord for the meal. For the meal. Okay. So they are made with a deliberate will. Deliberate will. There are two words here. You have the word deliberate and the word will. What is deliberate? The meaning of deliberate. What faculty does deliberate? The intellect. It is the intellect that deliberates, that it proves or shows you the many possibilities. Huh? And because you reflect, you use your intellect after you take a decision. So a deliberate will is a will, this taking a decision after having reflected on the problem, on the subject. Okay? Well, next paragraph, 2.5. The two kinds of acts, the human act, we saw that. The one we have the master, we do that consciously. That means with my intellect, consciously and deliberately will. That means I will, but after deliberation, you know. It's not a decision taken like that. I have to reflect on that. And when you study the analysis of the human act, here, you will see very well how we deliberate. We pass from the part of action of the will, we go back to the intellect, we go to the will, we come back to the intellect, we deliberate. And the second part is deliberation of the means. And because of that, we are responsible. We are responsible when we do an action with full knowledge and full consent. We have a sufficient knowledge and a full consent. That is a moral act. You remember when you go to catechism? Remember that? What are the conditions to commit a sin? First, a matter, something, an action, bad action. Secondly, full knowledge, to know, reflection, and consent. You know. So if there is something lacking, there is no sin. Okay? Act of man, we already spoke about that. Now I go just after the square, just 50.1.3. The division of voluntary act. We distinguish the voluntary act as elicited act, and imperative act. Okay. You can? I will. Thank you, because I have a big man to bend, you know. Okay. So an elicited act is a voluntary act which proceeds from the will itself. We have subject, act, and object. Remember that? Subject, act, and object. And we saw that we can explain a lot of things with that. So the subject is the will. The act is the willing or volition. And the object is the will. Okay. So, good. So, here we see, what is an elicited act? Is the act of the will. Is the act of willing. The act itself of willing. I decide to do or not to do. I decide to take a mean or not to take a mean. to accomplish my action. That is illicit. And what is the origin of that word? That word comes from the Latin illicitous, that means to make gushed. To make, for example, when Moses took his stick and touched the rock, and the water gushed. So that is the elicited means the action gushing from your will. So it is the action of the will itself. Elicited, it is the action of the will, such as the act of love or the act of choice. In fact, in the analysis of St. Thomas is number 6 and number 8. All that is the elicited act, the act of the will itself, the act of willing. For example, you go to New York. You decide to go to New York. But the act of taking the decision to go to New York and taking the decision of taking the necessary means to go to New York, that is the act of the will itself. But when you want to go to New York, what you have to do, you have to stand up, to take your car, to go to the station, to buy the ticket, etc., or to go by bus. That is the imperative acts. The acts commanded by the will. Just in the act of the will itself, the act of willing, or the act of the will, that's the act executing. Imperative. For example, you decide to make an apple pie. You decide. That is the elicited act. After that, you have to use many things, to do many actions. All those actions are imperative. That means commanded. You know, in the army, you have an officer. He gives an order. Go, do that. Stop. Stop, begin, etc. Do that. It is an order. An order. It is the accomplishment. Is it the accomplishment of the action? No. It is to indicate to the soldier what he has to do. So that is correspond, I will say, to the gushing, illicit act. But now the soldier has to put that into practice. So my will command to my different activity, different power. My legs, my eyes, my mind, my imagination, etc. All my body now is commanded, is imperative, and now I am putting that into practice. Okay? So, what is the most important? Is this the act of willing? No. If somebody decides to kill, he decides, I will kill, I decide to kill, is my will, okay. But after that, he stopped. But he's a killer in his mind. It's the same. Jesus said that when you look at another wife than your wife, with concupiscence, with lust, you commit an adultery. That means it's not necessary to go to the action. The morality begins here. Begins here. Okay, we will come back on that. Next page, next paragraph. So, principle from which the human act springs. So we have two kinds of principles. We have the intrinsic principle and the extrinsic principle. Well, intrinsic principle, that means what are inside of you, within you, what contributes to the action of to accomplish an act of will. I have that here. First, the intellect. I don't have that, you have that here. The intellect, the will. You have also the sense appetite. They play a role. For example, you pass in front of the Dairy Queen. It's not your intellect, it is your sense appetite. The habits we acquire. The good habits help us to be virtuous, but the bad habits, the vices, are difficulty to practice virtues. So, virtue and vices, with which this power of his soul can be endowed. So, my power are my sense, my intellect and my will, spiritual power, and my senses. You remember that? My senses, and external senses, internal senses, imagination, memory, estimative, cogitative, coordinating sense. And we have also the sense appetite, concupiscible appetite and irascible appetite. All those are powers in us. Okay? They are intrinsic principles. That means they don't work on us from outside. They work within, from within. My passion, my imagination, all that is from it is in me, in myself. Okay, a remark. Since the first three have already been treated under psychology, only an exposition of habits and their various kind to be given here. So we give here Wallace give you some explanations of habit. But before that, we have intrinsic principle, but also extrinsic principle to man. That means from without. And what is leading man in his human conduct? It is the law. It can be natural law, eternal law, civil law, canon law. It is a law. So that influence also is, but from outside, not from within. Now, a word about habits. We already spoke about that. We saw that maybe a little bit when we study philosophy of man. A habit can be understood initially as a disposing of a power. A disposing of a power. A power acquires some new disposition. For example, your fingers. Your fingers, when you were 6 years old, you were not able to write. But when you are 7 years old, you begin to write. So you acquire a new disposition. You dispose, you have a new power to act in a determined way. It can be a habit acquired through education. It can be acquired through your own decision. For example, the practice of virtue, the good habit of smoking. Okay, it's good for the company. And for the doctor who would cure your cancer, and pharmaceutical company, they are happy with that. Okay, man is able to perform a variety of acts through his various powers, but without the disposing influence of habit, acquire ability. What is the word habit? Habit comes from habeo in Latin. And habeo, habitum, participle passive or super, means to possess, to have. Interesting, look at that. To have and habeo. In many languages, the B and the V are pronounced the same thing. Viva et papa. Biba. Some people in South America, they don't say viva, they say biba et papa. That means also may the Pope drink. Two meaning. Cuba. Someone they say Cuba, some though they say Cuba. So the B and the V are very close. It's interesting to see the root in Latin, aveo, in English, and habitum, habitation, habit. So the word habit at the beginning means possession, to possess. Possession. A habit, I possess. A house is a possession to stay in. Okay? So a habit is something we acquire. Remember what Father Reichman writes, it's very good. Operational, acquire operational structure. Acquire operational structure. A structure, something stable, something being now a part of my personality, and that is to produce something. For example, you learn how to play the piano or the violin. So when you learn that, you acquire a new dimension of your personality. In that dimension, we help you to produce something rapidly, with efficiency and with surety. That is a habit. A good habit is a virtue, and a bad habit is a vice. But there is many kind of habit. We can have a habit, intellectual habit. It's for you. And we can have technical habit. For example, if you are a carpenter, then you should be able to fix nail without crushing your tongue. But myself, something, you know, I must have a good farm insurance before. So it is the same. Huh? You know the language. That is a habit. Huh? Yeah. If you can speak fluently the language, so you acquire the habit of speaking Spanish, speaking English, speaking Japanese, etc. It is something stable. The characteristic of habit is stability. It is a disposition, but that continues. It's not only for a few days, for example, a few weeks, huh? Something temporary. Huh? Okay? You remember when you were young and you had the visit of the parish priest at your house, and your mother, your grandmother tell you, you know, be wise, be very quiet, don't move. So for the time of the visit of the parish priest, you were very polite, very quiet, and the priest, oh, I'm sure you can become a good future priest, huh? A good future paralytic. But after that, finish. No more vocation. The disposition, huh? Something stable. Okay, so man is able to, without disposing the influence of habit, huh? What will happen? We will act at random. Huh? For example, suppose what somebody has a arrow here and how do we say, a bow and arrow. Oh. First we give, okay, try that. And you have a target here, and for the first time, vim, direct in the wood, the center. Okay, continue, but the other, it was at random, by chance, you know, by chance. It was not a real habit. The real habit is to be able to attain the target every time, okay? So in the definition, it is a firm disposition of power to act in a determinate way, huh? To act in a good way, virtue, but to act in a bad way, vice. Because to become to acquire a bad habit is to be a professional. You know, those are professional to open the safes, to steal, pickpocket. They are professional. They acquire bad habit, but they are very good, very good in there. Okay. As next page. As the actualization of a power or potency, a habit may be seen as a perfection. In fact, a good habit is a perfection. A perfection you acquire. It is something permanent, helping you to be more efficient. To be more. For example, I'm sure now you are much more able to understand philosophy than you were in September. So we acquire a habit, the habit of philosophy, of, you know, wisdom. Yeah, yes, it's true. We acquire a new language. New language. It is a kind of second nature. It is almost something natural. I saw recently on television a young Chinese, I think it's a Chinese or Korean. He's blind, but he plays the piano. Incredible. He plays one of the most difficult pieces of lists without saying nothing, without making any mistake. Even the great musicians have difficulty to do that. So yeah, it is a part. It is like natural. I was afraid. I said he will make a mistake. No, I thought he played. And more than that, he is trisomic. Interesting. It is trisomic. You know, those who are not developed completely. And that is excellent musician, excellent. So that means we acquire, but to acquire that habit we must be, it's not a simple repetition, you know. It is a repetition with attention, with reflection. If you do always the same mistake at the same place, you will never progress. I remember I taught the music, the piano for beginners. I'm a specialist for beginners in philosophy, in piano. And So they begin to play, and they play very well. Suddenly they stop. And someone, they stop always at the same passage. Can I say they progress? No. They have to correct, to work only on that. I try sometimes, but you know, they prefer to play what they know instead of working on what they don't know. So they cannot progress. And they cannot progress. It's not something they are assimilated, they are acquired. It's not something that become themselves. Okay? When I say assimilate, that means try to make what you study yourself. That is a habit. It is a second nature. What is nature? The principle of activities. Second nature, a principle of activities. Okay? So I go now to virtue and vice in the middle. An action of habit, perfecting, bettering the human action is not in conflict with the division of habit. So that is we call a virtue. To operate better, to have to act easily as a human being. So in general terms, the distinction between virtue as a good habit, to produce a good act, or vice as a bad habit to produce a bad evil act, turns on whether the habit produced act conducive to promoting man, good or evil. If the habit promotes some good, it is virtue. Promotes some evil, it is vice. It is very simple. So acts of virtues are those who are suitable to human nature. Important. A virtue is to act regularly, constantly, and easily according to my human nature. For example, to be true, not to be a liar, is to act according to my human nature as intellect. As an intelligent man, I am made for the truth. So I have to communicate the truth, to discover the truth. If I am a liar, I am against my nature. To lie is to act against our human nature. And that is a sin. What is to be a drunken, drunkenness? We say drunkenness make man like an animal. Why? Because we lose our reason. So we are not acting according to our nature. Here I come back on the notion of nature. You remember nature, what is the essence as principle of activity. Principle of activity. So I know my nature through my activity. And to act morally as a man is to act according to what I am. That means according to my animality, I must act as an animal. I must eat. It's obligation, moral obligation to eat. To take some shower during the year, at least once a year. Sometimes we forget that. We forget that morality is not only for the mind, it is also for the body. And also, even when I eat, I put my morality in the way of eating. I don't eat like my dog. No. We finish. We take time, we talk, etc. So that is the way we have to act as a human being. For example, I am a human being. I don't have wings. If I go to the top of Rockefeller Center in New York, Empire State Building, I say, now I decide I am a bird. So, okay, I'm a bird, I jumped. I am a bird. You act against your nature. That is common sense. It's so obvious. But if you understand that, people should understand that when we don't observe the law of nature, even in our biology, we are not human. Here you can speak about gay marriage. Enter here. It's not according to our nature. Our sexuality is not made only to exercise between the same sex. It is for procreation. It is for expression of love to other sex. That it is something so elementary. But it's funny today, our great genius, they cannot find that. God confound pride of the intelligent. And that is an example. When the abnormality becomes the normality, it's a sign of degradation. You know, my father, when we were saying that 30 years ago, he said that is Sodom and Gomorrah. It was his expression. In fact, in the Bible, exactly that. It's exactly that. Sodom and Gomorrah was vicious against nature. Against nature. But we are more intelligent than the author of nature. So now we put on the same level homosexuality and fecundity, normal marriage. That is, and now the synod in Rome on that is to promote the family. Paul II, Francis, today is so aware that the cause of the problem is the destruction of the family, and the way to save the society is the restoration of the family. You know, what is a cancer is the destruction of the cells. We can say that is the cancer of our society. You know? When the family is destroyed, the cells are destroyed, that is cancer. And if they are not convinced, in 1900, the beginning of the 20th century, the Caucasian people, they were 25% of the population of the world, and today are 12%. It is a principle in biology. When a species is diminishing, it is condemned to disappear. And that is mathematics. You multiply always by a fraction, a fraction, a fraction, a fraction. You cannot grow. It's common sense, no? If you have 5, multiply by 1, 0.1. You cannot add more than 5. You will have less than 5. Little by little is, and that's what happened in Italy. They don't have one child by family. In Spain, about 1 child by family. And the Pope said recently, and on Wednesday, you see, you know, he did not mention the countries, and those countries are Catholic in majority. So in Netherlands, and they say if they want to arrive to the normal growing of the population of Netherlands, every family should have 4 children, and that will take 80 years. In the during that time, the Muslims, they have 8, 9 children by family. And sometimes they have 3 wives. So they have 27 children, and we have only 1 more child. But just democracy, the law of the number. Don't forget that democracy is the law, the general will. What is the general will we adore since 1776 is the half plus 1. So when a country is almost 40% Muslim, or Brussels, so don't be surprised that in 25 years, the majority will be Muslim. That is ineluctable, unavoidable. And not only a few people begin to speak about that. It is a catastrophe. By our culpa, our maxima culpa. For money, we prefer money to children, to life. That is materialism. I finished my homily here. I go to page 359, cardinal virtue. They are cardinal because they are inch. Cardo in Latin, cardo, cardinis, cardo means inch. So a door is fixed on edge and turned on hinges, you know. So the 4 hinges are the virtue, all the virtues are in the 4 cardinal virtues. Prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. And all the virtues enter under those 4 habits. They are habits, good habits. The prudence develop perfect the intellect. Prudence perfects the intellect. So when you take a decision, you use the virtue, you practice the virtue of prudence before your action. So in here, in that, you have intellect. All that part here, on the right, on the left side, the intellect, the virtue leading you, helping you, is the virtue of prudence. In the second virtue, perfecting the will, is the virtue of justice. It's interesting, when we speak about Saint Joseph, the feast of Saint Joseph, in Latin, we said, homo, jus, and prudence. Jus, vir, nem, vir, justus, et prudence. It's et prudence. Interesting. Justus, the will, prudence, the intellect. Saint Joseph was a man able to use very well his will and his intellect. And when we want to speak about a holy man, we speak about Justus. And in the word Justus, you have justice and you have jus here. And jus is right. Right, practice the right in Latin. I have some right in Latin, say jus. So justice is the respect of the jus, of the right of other. To give to others what they have the right to have. To be respected, etc. Temperance is perfecting the concupiscible appetite, or desiderative appetite, concupiscible appetite, or in modern we say desiderative. And by the way, interesting here, the word desire. But desire is different from to will. To desire is something sensible. To will is something from not necessarily sensible. Can God desire? We desire what we don't have. God cannot desire. First, He has no body. He has no emotion as a body, as we have. He is totally perfect. So, what? He cannot desire, but he can possess. And when we speak about the will, there are two aspects of the will. To strive, strive, and to possess. Possess is to love. So excuse me, to love has two dimensions. We can love by struggling, by striving, by making an effort. I love to play the music, but I practice. That is the love with effort, strive. It is to will with effort. Here it is to will, but to love, to possess. God can love only in the second part. He cannot take effort. That means the love of God is to love perfectly, and His love, we saw that, is fecund, is producing. And finally, the virtue perfecting the irascible appetite. Irascible, that means ira in Latin is anger. Anger. Ira. Irascible appetite. That means when you have difficulty to attain something, you make effort. Courage. Courage. That, yeah, fortitude is the virtue of fortitude. Courage. Audacious. Okay? So that is, they are moral cardinal. But we have also intellectual virtues. And prudence is also an intellectual virtue. And we have understanding. Perfect. Wisdom, understanding, and science. Three intellectual virtues. Wisdom, understanding, or science understanding, and science. There are three habits of the intellect. Three habits of the intellect. And because they are good habits of the intellect, we call that also intellectual virtues. We acquire the habit of reflecting correctly before taking a decision. We call that wisdom. We have the habit of understanding something and to make a good judgment It is understanding, and we have the knowledge of something, a science. Science is a habit also to know the reality, the thing, okay? So the good habit of thinking, you can read that. I go to page 360. So the good habit of desiring, appetite, person, the appetite, we are already. Here the three here are about appetite. Here we have intellectual appetite, here we have sensible appetite. But all the three are appetite. That here is for knowledge. Knowledge. So we have the two main, it's interesting here. We have all the power are here. We have the intellect, perfected by the prudence. We have the will, perfected by virtue of justice. And we have the sense appetite, coming from our senses, appetite to possess, to enjoy something, temperance, eating, sexuality, etc., comfort, and a possession, and the appetite also of harassing, I mean, to react against an enemy, against a danger, courage, etc. Well, we will study that with Father Malady. I went to study philosophy, social and fundamental moral. Okay? But here we study that in philosophy. I go to Numbers 50.6. Voluntary and free act. Here we touch something we study already in philosophy of man. I will only come back on what is a repetition. Those who were with me in the first semester, you will have some repetition. The other will be something new for you. So if you don't understand, you will go to our permanent future deacon and you will be happy to explain that. Okay. You know, the will is tending toward the good, okay? It is in my nature to tend toward the good. But we can distinguish two kinds of tendency toward the good. There is a tendency of the will toward the good because voluntas ut natura. That means in my nature as a human being, I am necessarily tending toward the good, the perfect good. I'm not free. Here there is no freedom. It is a necessary tendency. The comparison, we can use it, the compass. You know the compass. When you go in the forest, you see nothing except trees. If you have a compass, it will indicate you where is the north, where is Canada. Don't forget, North Pole is in Canada. Magnetic Pole. And Santa Claus is a Canadian citizen. You can say, keep your Okay, so as long as we tend toward the north and the good of the north, we are safe. We can find our way. If we lose that, we don't know. So what is for us the north? It is the perfect good. We are tending naturally toward the perfect good. In every action we do, we are searching for the good. But in reality, in the concrete life, we don't have perfect good. So we speak about voluntas ut libera. The will as free. Voluntas ut libera, free. Libera, free. That means not a single finite being can determine my will. And I told that to you before, but the main reason is that you know, I cannot desire anything, even a mountain of gold. I know a day or another I will. And that possession is not eternal. So we want to possess the happiness, the good, without losing it. you know the problem of those people who won the lottery. And they made a movie about that. In the majority, they have a big problem. Big problem. Many destroy their family, their life, etc. And we have a movie on that in Canada, family, they want. You know, why? Because that good is only temporarily. If we make eternal or perpetual, immortal, something which is temporarily, is not true. We cannot be happy. We can fake to be happy, we cannot be happy. How many people are very sad, they are very unhappy in a rich mansion? How many suicide? How many, they have a long table and the woman is there and the man is here, and when they want to talk, they make a message, and the man, when they go there. Richness, happiness. Why to have a house with 48 rooms when we are only 2? We should use that for the homeless. Huh? So in fact, what is interesting? We are free because we are not free. That is paradoxal. Huh? We are free in front of finite good because we are not free in front of the perfect good, the perfect happiness. And nothing on earth can satisfy our happiness. For the simple reason that we know with absolute certitude that happiness, that good will not last. It's only temporary. It's a question of years, or hours sometimes. And remember in the Gospel, the man who has a great harvest, and he built how do you say, a farm, barn to put, and he said, tonight I will take you. Yeah, happen. Okay. So, so what is interesting? Every free act is voluntary. A free act is necessarily voluntary, but not every voluntary act is free. Not every voluntary act is free. There is only one voluntary act that is not free. It is when we are tending toward the perfect good, that we are not free. But because we are not free in tendency toward the perfect good, we are free to choose any kind of good. So we can understand why Saint Francis of Assisi did not accept to be rich, he preferred to be poor. Okay, so I go now to the notion of freedom. Take your page 364 and 369. One or both of them in front of you. So when we take a decision, the first decision we take is to do or not to do. To do or not to do. And when we decide to do this or to do that. Okay, to do or to do that. So when we decide to do or not to do, we call that freedom of exercise. Or freedom of contradiction. Because I can say yes, I can say no. That is one freedom of exercise. To say yes, to say no. I do or I do not, at your marriage. And after that, I have to choose the means. So that is freedom of choice. When I choose the means to do this or that, or we call that also freedom of specification. We determine what will be the best means to attain the good. Now, so that will be seen again in the analysis of the human. So go now to that analysis. So if you see you have the intellect and you have the will, and both of them are present to every stage. So there are three lines. First, the phase of intention. The second, the means, election of means, and the third one, the execution. So you have that on your paper. Huh? So if you look, we have here divided in two. Each one is divided in two. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. That is coming from St. Thomas. No, not that 4, huh? But the analysis is coming from St. Thomas. So first, when we see something, we perceive a good. We pass in front of the restaurant, you see some hamburger or something, you are hungry or you are thirsty, okay? And you have an attraction. You have an attraction, a tendency, huh? Tower, a wish. I will like that, huh? Okay? So that is the wish. It's not an act of the will, but it is on the line of the will. After that, what you have to say, can I obtain that? If it is not possible, we stop there. If it is possible, we have the phase of intention. Be careful. Intention here means tending towards something. You remember intentional union, huh? To tend toward the object. That is it. It is a desire, a wish. A wish, a desire in morality is not an act of the will. It's still an act of the appetite. Huh? My appetite desire a glass of Budweiser, and so, or desire a good omega. Okay. Now, if I stop there, no problem. But if I continue to reflect, I will pass to the second stage, the stage of election, the stage of duty. And now I have to deliberate to know what is for, what is in favor of that decision, what is against that decision. I deliberate. And deliberation can last a long time. And some people, before going to marriage, they hesitate like Skiller in Simpson. He is never able to take the decision, you know. So that is deliberate. Can the intellect by itself able to stop the deliberation? No. We need the will. There is a fable, Buridan's ass. Buridan is a philosopher of the Middle Age, and he has a fable. The fable is an ass is here, and we put 2 heap of hay at equal distance. And the poor ass is looking, is not able to decide finally what happened, he died. So he does not have the will. So the will is fixing the decision, yes or no. Number 6, consent. It is the most important act. When you consent, it is an act of the will, and at the point of view of morality, you are already responsible of your act. If you decide to kill, for example, you already are a killer in your mind, or adultery in your mind, or a liar in your mind, etc. Okay? So, but we cannot stay there. So you decide to do or not to do. What is that? Here. Number 6 is here. Freedom of exercise, freedom of contradiction. Why contradiction? Because we can say yes, we can say no. Okay? Now, if you decide to be logical with yourself, if you decide, yes, I will do that, then if you are logical, you have to take the good means, the best means. So you go back to your intellect. 7, practical judgment. And again, your intellect, with the virtue of prudence, propose to you many means. Sometimes they will say that is the best. But who will decide that is the best? It is the intellect? No, it is your will. It is you who decide that in this situation, the best will be that. That is very, very important. It is freedom of choice or specification, number 8. That means you are, of course, you are determined by the object. You are determined. For example, if somebody wants to kill, he can use a knife, he can use poison, he can use a gun. Well, maybe the gun is the best. But you say, no, I prefer a knife. You know? It is you who decide. Of course, you are determined objectively to use a tool, a knife, but it is you who decide that you are determined by the object, by the instrument. And when you decide that, you can stop there. And some people, they stop there. They decide to kill, but they never kill. It's only there. We have to pass to execution. Execution. In execution, again, you come back to the intellect, and the intellect indicates how to do. Order. What is order? Is to indicate how to do, or command. Command is to say how you have to do. You know? But the will, the intellect itself cannot move. The intellect is only like a car, you know, in the night. The light enlightens you. You know, what is moving? It is your powers. So who will move your power? It is your will. So the will here will move your many powers in such a way you will put into practice what you decide. You will execute what you decide. And finally, your intellect indicate to you here that is you succeeded. Hey, now you have your cap and gun, or you have your stone. Here, you have your stone, and you have your surplus, your stone, your arm, etc. And now you are invited to preach for the first time in the Cathedral of Norwich. So you know that you attained your goal, you attained what you willed, you worked for, and now you enjoy that with legitimacy. It's good, no? That means you realize you enjoy, you know? To love, what I told you, to love is not only to make effort. All that is to make effort. The complete love, it is when you possess the good. So when we speak about God, the ultimate reality, unique reality, God loves His own goodness. We saw that before. He cannot make an effort. So it's interesting to see that all that is a strife toward the good possess. Here is the good love as possess. Here is the good love as desire, as will, as struggling for. You know? You see, but they both are love. I can love what I don't possess. I can love what I possess. Now you buy a car, you discuss with your wife, and you say, okay, we'll buy a Mazda 3. Father Legault has one. I think it's a good car. And you clarify, you make many effort to arrive to that. And finally, you go out, you drive out from the garage, and you drive. You say, "Oh, wonderful!" Huh? You know, you enjoy it. I hope. Well, that is very simple example, no? But you can take any kind of example. You can apply that to every act of the will. Every act of the will. Okay, so above those, reflecting on that, Father Wallace give you some interesting remarks. For example, 362, 362, you have some remarks. For example, not every human act involves all these individual steps. It's not necessary that everyone, in every act, sometimes we jump from one to there. And sometimes we decide very rapidly. Sometimes. Or sometimes we come back. We are just becoming to put into practice, and we come back to the choice of the meaning. That is only one model, St. Thomas gave only one possibility. There are many, many, many other possibilities. Okay? It's not an absolute. It's not an absolute. Secondly, the intellect. Okay, the intellect is influenced by the will. Because if we pay attention here, if you pay attention 3, 5, 7, 9, it is because you will to pay attention. It is, in fact, your will is influenced by your, your intellect is influenced by your will, and that is the virtue of prudence. In fact, the virtue of prudence is not a pure intellectual virtue. A virtue depends also not only on your intellect, a virtue depends on your will. So even the virtue of prudence, even if it is an intellectual virtue, it depends on your will. It is you who voluntarily pay attention to the problem everywhere there. You want to do that. You can skip that. You cannot pay attention. And you will be responsible, of course. No? I go to page 363. So the influence on the intellect, the influence, of course, on the other, and you have other power able to influence you, your passion, your emotion, all that can also influence your judgment. We will see that when we study next class, the level of voluntary responsibility. Well, you can read page 365 on the commentary of Father Austin Faculty. Very good. For example, at the bottom we say, we spontaneously begin to make motive. The first year are not voluntary. It is something spontaneous. Spontaneous. And if stay there, after that they become voluntary. So next part, the last practical judgment. But the last practical judgment is the judgment you decide. In fact, you know, it is important to know. I will finish by this remark that seems very, very important. You know, when we do an action, my will needs necessarily, my will, it is a subject, actor, and object. My will cannot will without an object. I can say, I will. But what do you will? I will. No, I will something. But, so there's something you will determine your action of willing. For example, if you will some ice cream, then you're willing as an object ice cream. So you are determined by ice cream. But who decide to use ice cream? You. So the object is determining because you determine that object. What is that? Auto-determination. Auto-determination. And that is freedom. What is freedom? It is not to will nothing. It is to will something, and that something determines the act of willing, but the subject is the one who decides what will be the object. If I decide that for dessert I use ice cream, it is not, of course, ice cream will be the object of my will. I will ice cream. But I will ice cream. Why? Because I decide that ice cream will be the object of my willing. Finally, it is auto-determination. Self-determination. Self-determination. Mastering. Self-mastering. You know, finally, what is freedom? Essentially, freedom is self-mastering. To have the mastering, the dominion over my own decision. That is freedom. It's not to do what I want. It's to do what I have to do. I will to do. You know, I will to do. I am not the object of passion. I control my passion. I am the master. The one who is master is not the one who drinks 10 bottles of vodka. Maybe not. 2 is enough. But the one who is able to control either not drinking or drinking just correctly in the middle. You know? Not too much, not just in the middle. The virtue is there. And virtue is not necessary in abstinence. Temperance is to find the middle. Okay? So that is very, very important. The will, the freedom is in that capacity we have and that power we have to determine the object that determines my act of willing. I am not the slave of the object. My cat cannot do that. My cat is determined by the mouse. Okay? But I can decide when I go to the restaurant I can decide I will be determined by a chicken, or by a tuna, or by a steak. It is not the steak that determines. Yes, the steak determines my will. I have an object of my will. I want to eat a steak. But it is I who decide that will be the object. That I decide what is the object. It is the central of freedom. It's it. It is, we cannot have an act non-determined. Every act of freedom must be determined. I must will something. But the will, the something, determine my act of willing, because I put that object in front of me. You know, if I want to eat ice cream, because I will that ice cream will be what will satisfy my appetite. I'm not the slave of that, I control that. If I cannot control, I am a slave. So essentially, I repeat, essentially, freedom is mastery, is the control, control, self-control. It is self-dominion, dominion of myself. The big victory is not to conquer others, first is to conquer oneself, to control myself in my action. If I control myself, I can control the world. And that is correspond. In fact, Socrates was not able to speak about that, because for him, the most important action of man was to know. But freedom is not only to know. Freedom is to will what I desire. Is to will the object of my will. I am not the victim of the object. For example, if a man becomes a drunkard, we cannot say he is the victim of the wine or victim of Budweiser. He cannot sue Budweiser because he's a drunkard. Because it is himself who put in front of him the beer he will drink. He is self-determining himself to beer instead of milk or Coca-Cola. So that is central, because sometimes it is difficult to speak about freedom. Very difficult. And if you teach a day, if you have to some catechism as deacon, you will ask questions about freedom. Don't forget that. To be free is to be the master of my own object of willing. The master of my own object of willing. I will what I decide to will. If Saint Francis decided to marry Lady Poverty, it is because for him, instead of the money of his father, he voluntarily, freely put Lady Poverty in front of his will, and he said that it is what I will. Okay, have a good Holy Triduum. Can you stop? Yeah.